Brothers and sisters, greetings. Kandilumelisa batho botlhe nda habari dumelang sanibonani Bashini Mulweni, my African family. Thank you for tuning in once again, and I appreciate all the support from all the viewers out there who will continue to watch this content. It took me so much time to prepare for this, just for this alone, and my thinking is, hey, I don't think the quality of the channel is at a place yet where I can ask for contributions or anything like that. I'm still working on improving the quality of what I produce, what we produce. But yeah, what I would ask for now in the way of support is, please like and subscribe, and engage as well. Subscribing is free, guys. You don't have to pay for that. And I talk about this because when I check the analytics on my channel, a lot of people, about 70-something%, are not subscribed. So please, if you're enjoying the content, subscribe. Even if you don't agree with some of the things I say, it's still fine. But if you keep coming back, come on, subscribe. Brothers and sisters, I want us to have a somewhat complex conversation, but what I really want to do is to look at the world. I like to have this global view of things, and the reason for that is because when I look at politics and I look at national politics, I look at global politics, I look at the African continent, I have these different views, and I just look at the whole thing as a chess game. The Earth is a chessboard when I look at it, and I look at all the different interests and how they're positioning themselves. And these are the things that inform my political positionality. I do look at the political theater, and what I mean by that is sort of things that are being said, VDS, Nkandla, Phala Phala. Floyd left the EFF, Floyd Shivambu leaves the EFF, things like that. I do keep an eye on these things, but they don't factor too much into my political analysis. I try not to focus too much on the political theater. I look at crucial questions from a geopolitical vantage point. So with that long-winded intro, today I want to talk about some of the moves that I see and giving some historical context as well for some of these things. When they are talking about Cape independence, and this is our friend on the screen there, you'll see his name is it Craig Phil, I think. The guy says, this is a British, you can see the headline, the British-born Cape independence leaders SA citizenship must be revoked. Of course, Vuyo Zungula, the leader of the ATM, challenged this movement. And the history of this thing is basically they're trying to say the Western Cape must be independent from South Africa. I'm sure a lot of you have heard this sort of discourse going on. You see I'm with Vuyo Zungula, by the way. This British-born guy can, come here and be trying to tell us the Cape must be independent. And I spent so much time trying to find a clip that is so important for us to look at, where this guy was basically saying, firstly, they want to establish an Israel-like state. Now, you need to think about that and what it means. He says they want to establish in the Western Cape an Israel-like state that is independent from South Africa. But he also adds, he says, we want this state to be based on Western values. Now, Africans in South Africa, see, these are the kinds of things we cannot tolerate. You know, these are the kinds of things that we should not even entertain. We must just say, absolutely not going to happen. And I will explain to you why. And my reasoning is not just some petty hatred or anything like that. No, it's geopolitical reasoning as to why we cannot entertain such things. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the historical context, and in that I will go a little bit into Afrikaner nationalism. Um, I will also go into the history of the Cape, the Western Cape. Remember, the Western Cape is the gateway through which the colonialists arrive on our shores. So the history of the Cape is so crucial in South Africa. You can't understand anything unless you understand very well what took place there upon the arrival of the settlers and how things unfolded, and the development a bit later on of um, Afrikaner Christian nationalism in particular. And that's so important because sometimes I get a sense that uh, Africans in this country, when they are hearing when they are hearing things like Orania, when they are hearing things like Cape independence, I think we're not thinking about the geopolitical implications of that. And so I really think we should talk about this. So I wanted to show you this person who is, you know, putting forward this proposal to say the Cape must be independent, because the South African state is failing. So, we want Cape Town to be a special place, that is different and can take care of its own needs, whatever story they're telling. I'm just looking at it geopolitically and not based on what they're saying in the political theater. So let's begin here. Let's start with the history of the Cape. I think that is an important place to start. Please note these things that I've said. So they want an independent Western Cape, which will be a Israel-like state. And they want it to be based on Western values, right? Now, of course, it sounds crazy. Any person of European descent, whether they came here long ago or whether their ancestors came long ago or they just recently came here and got citizenship, for you to think you can, in 2024, you can come here and tell us how you think our country should be structured, that you think you should partition our land further. I remember South Africans. First of all, South Africa is how the colonialists mapped out the whole thing. This territory known as South Africa, it is mapped out and named by the colonizers for their interests, right? And although, you look at Rhodes and his work throughout Southern Africa, not just in South Africa, that they have a regional focus. They don't think about things the way you may look at them. Let me show you something. Let me show you something. So when they are looking at the map, they're not necessarily seeing it the way you are seeing it. So I want to share with you a map that I got of South Africa. I hope you can see this on the screen. So if you look at the screen, And if you look at the Western Cape there, the southernmost point, that is where the initial colonial settlers, you know, arrived and started to expand from there in the Western Cape, in what they call the Cape of Good Hope. Now, look at the map, Africans. Let's take a look at this map and really think about this. If you look at the Western Cape, that is where their Cape of Good Hope was, and now they're talking about the Cape needs to be its own state, Western style state. Think about that. This is how they are, this is where they arrived, and pretty much see this as, you know, belonging to them, pretty much. Well, the whole of South Africa, but there are certain parts that they are very adamant about, you know, that these belong to us. So now we will come back to this map, but I want to take you through this. And where I would like to start is to begin by reading a little bit on the Cape of Good Hope, right? Cape of Good Hope. Now, and let me put this disclaimer that I am going to be reading from Wikipedia. I know that people don't say that it's not a reliable source or whatever. Look, for me, wherever I'm getting the information, as long as you can sort of give me references or show me how you come to your conclusions, if I think it makes sense, then you know I'm fine with it. But I don't necessarily look at who's writing, you know, and who says who's credible. Because in the information war, I don't really think there's anyone you can trust. But you just have to look at what you get and look at how they came to the conclusions they came to. So the Cape of Good Hope. Let's look at the history of it. So here they talk about how I want us to start in the 1400s. I don't want us to go all the way back. So, in the early modern era, the first European to reach the Cape was the Portuguese explorer Bartolomeu Dias. You see, they say this is done in honor of the guy. You can see this image there, right? On 12 March 1488, who named it the Cape of Storms. Now, pay attention to this thing of naming. You know, my spiritual teacher, Benami, spoke a lot about the power to define, and that one of the ways in which Africans were conquered was this very issue of the power to define. I mean, in everything, you know, when we were defined as black, when we were, you know, when our country and, you know, our land, the territory was renamed, you know, and important points were renamed. Some things we had names for already were renamed, you know, and that is part of the power to define. They're defining now. Now this guy comes and says, initially, this is the Cape of Storms. Now listen to this. It was later renamed by John II of Portugal as Cape of Good Hope. So that's how you get the Cape of Good Hope. That's where that concept comes from. Because of the great optimism engendered by the opening of a sea route to India and the East. Because you read the history, they were not initially coming to South Africa. No. They were more interested in India because remember, the colonial project was also in India. They were busy there. They were not just busy here, they were busy there as well with the colonial project. So as they are going there to do their project, they stumble upon us, this place, the Cape, you know. And so, yeah, you know, let's read on. So initially it was the Cape of Storms because it was so difficult to navigate that. They struggled for centuries to navigate that. When finally someone was able to navigate and even settle on the land, it was a big thing. It was a big achievement, milestone, such a momentous moment for them. Um, but yeah, so initially it was the Cape of Storms because of the difficulty of navigation there for a long time. It was later renamed Cape of Good Hope because there was great optimism now that we have opened a sea route that allows us to go to India. But not only that, we have established a refreshment stop. eh? We have established a refreshment stop for ourselves. The Khoikhoi people lived in the Cape area when the Dutch first settled there. The Khoikhoi had arrived in this area about 1500 years before. The Dutch called them Hottentots, a term that has now come to be regarded as pejorative. Yeah, of course, and this is exactly my problem with white supremacy and how it expresses itself. How do you get to a place, you meet people, and you possibly, without even getting to know them and asking them who they are, you decide these are this. But you see racism in the minds. In their minds, these are not necessarily people like them. They are humanoid. You can see they are humanoid, but I mean, it's not like, white people. That is the rationale of racism. It's important to understand these things because I don't think anyone's going to understand contemporary politics in South Africa without this understanding, because this is going to help us to understand what the quarrel really is about. And it's not what you think. It's not. It's not freedom, democracy, or the right to vote, or any of those things. In 1652, the Dutch East India Company's administrator Jan van Riebeeck established a resupply camp for the Dutch East India Company, some 50 kilometers north of the Cape in Table Bay, on April the 6th. And this eventually developed into Cape Town. Supplies of fresh food were vital on the long journey around Africa and Cape Town. Supplies of fresh food were vital on the long journey around Africa and Cape Town became known as the Tavern of the Seas. My fellow South Africans, especially the patriots, the patriotic South Africans, Cape Town was the Tavern of the Seas. They needed a stop as they are on their way, to with their activity. Now, this guys, I'm gonna break down these episodes into manageable parts, but this is gonna be a long one because I really want us to explore this thing and engage on it. Even if you have a disagreeing point, it's fine, but we must talk about this thing. We must look at this history. The Tavern of the Seas, guys. So you get to see them. You get to see them. Okay, let's read more. I didn't want to go in detail, but I think all these details are important because it will help us understand a lot of the South African political landscape and the territory itself. On 31 December 1687, a community of Huguenots or French Protestants arrived at the Cape of Good Hope from the Netherlands. They had fled from France due to religious persecution and gone to the Netherlands before making the journey to the Cape Colony. Members of this group included Pierre Joubert, who came from La Motte de Agaise. I hope I'm saying that right, as well as Jean Roy. The Dutch East India Company needed skilled farmers at the Cape of Good Hope, and the Dutch government saw opportunities to settle Huguenots at the Cape. The colony gradually grew over the 150 years that followed until it extended hundreds of kilometers to the north and the northeast. You see, now, when they're talking about extended, remember, there are people here, right? You are settling. Initially, you start by trading as you are passing by, né? yeah, the trading you're trading. But now you're not satisfied and you're saying, why are we paying actually? And these are not even like, people like us. I mean, why are we trading, giving them, money and, uh, in exchange for certain things from them, for cattle, for things like that? Why? We can just establish ourselves here and, grow our territory and access the resources when and as we please. Not this thing now where we have to go through the people who are here. Didn't make sense to them. And it is, and I say the rationale is these are Africans, and Africans, obviously, in the hierarchy of white supremacy, had been defined to be at the lowest of the low. So the white man who sees himself here in the hierarchy and then he has to deal almost like an equal with this one, no, that's where the fight came. So for you to not be confused by the political theater, you'll follow the money. That's where the truth is at. Follow the money. It was always about the money. But we will get to that when we start to discuss sort of the European nations and America, um, how they think about their interests in the world and what those interests actually are from their own mouths. I'm not going to be making claims for people. I'm just going to read what they have written in their security document. Now, back to the Cape of Good Hope. Now, it's funny to me, this thing of worldview and perspective is so important because, see, when you're saying the Cape of Good Hope, I can see from a European settler perspective. Because remember, this is the tapping of the seas, it opened up new routes for them. Yeah, the Cape of Good Hope, sure. For you, it makes sense. For me, oh no, that is the Cape of Doomsday, to borrow the language of the Democratic Alliance. That is the Cape of Doom. Hmm? That is the Cape of Doom, not the Cape of Good Hope. You know, so you see the vantage point, and that's why it's so difficult to find common ground with whites who are apologetic, who are who serve as apologists or defenders of colonialism and apartheid, to a small degree, who don't straight out condemn these things. It's a difficult thing because from their perspective, it's all good. But from my perspective, whose land is being invaded, it's not great. I don't think the Khoi and San people saw that as the Cape of Good Hope. I don't think so. Those who had the front line, I mean, that's why we talk about the front line war, the Khoi and the San, that were fought over centuries with them resisting this encroachment onto their land. So, Cape of Good Hope, man. Excuse me. Cape of Good Hope.